From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, it's your routine weekly briefing for Central North Carolina. I'm covering the period Monday today through Sunday this week, June 15th through the 21st of June. I'm Nick Petro. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll just go ahead and jump right into this wet weather briefing. And right now we have a low pressure, kind of an inverted coastal trough along the Carolina coast that will gradually lift northward through the midweek period. This is not a tropical system. This is just an inverted trough, more of a cooler type season weather feature. But it will bring an unsettled weather pattern for much of the work week with periods of rain, some heavy at times, and there is a chance for thunderstorms, but the rain will keep the temperatures down. So that should limit the risk for any kind of severe thunderstorm potential. And then once that system lifts by to the northeast, we're going to be remaining in an unsettled weather pattern, very moist pattern, unstable pattern. So really right through Friday, we could see the average between 2 and 4 inches of rain, maybe some isolated 5-inch amounts, highest amounts over the coastal plain. Closer to the coast, the higher the rainfall amounts may be. Clearly, that kind of rain will result in rises on streams, rivers, and even could give us some localized flooding. So what about this weekend? The coverage will be a little less, but we can't rule out the chance for mainly afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. But again, rainfall amounts and coverage will be less this weekend. All right. So how much rain, in case you're wondering? Today, you can see there's that area referencing the panel in the upper left. You could see there, that's anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches, basically 1 to 2 inches of rain expected today. And as we head into Tuesday, the highest amounts will shift more towards the coast, but still looking anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches across a good part of central North Carolina. And then on Wednesday, that system finally begins to lift to the north, and things, while they remain wet, probably not quite as heavy rain. And then Thursday and Friday is more of a typical pattern with just scattered afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Saturday and Sunday will be mainly dry, although, again, we can't rule out an isolated storm. But again, the best coverage will be across the eastern half or maybe even eastern third of the state. So when you add up the 7-day rainfall totals, we're looking at 2 to 4 inches across central North Carolina, locally higher amounts up to 5 inches. So that is the rainfall. Now, I've been featuring this slide on recent weekly briefings. This is from the Weather Prediction Center. They are doing this excessive rainfall outlook. It's kind of like SPC's, the Storm Prediction Center's thunderstorm outlook, but this relates more to flash flood risk. So when you're in the marginal green, that means isolated flash flooding is possible. But when you get into the yellow, that means, not only is the likelihood of flash flooding a little higher, but the impacts could be a little bit greater. And just like the SPC's storm prediction, categories, you could see the higher you go up there in that range, the worse off you are. So we're going to be in the marginal to slight risk, at least today and tomorrow. Wednesday, that shifts a little bit more towards the northeast part of North Carolina and up into Virginia. So anyway, the bottom line is with this rain, obviously we'll run the risk for some localized or scattered even flash flooding. All right. Speaking of the SPC and their severe weather outlooks, this is as it relates to severe thunderstorms. We are in central North Carolina is in the general. So the light green shade means basically thunderstorms are possible, but not necessarily severe. So today, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Tropics are quiet right now for the next 5 days. No concerns there. And then as we head even further down the road, it looks like perhaps maybe somewhat of a wet pattern will continue. And, I don't mind somewhat of a wet pattern personally, because, wet weather tends to keep the temperatures down and keeps the severe thunderstorm risk down, as long as it's not too wet. Because if it's too wet, then obviously you run a risk of flash flooding. And that may be the case, like I said, today and tomorrow. But generally, it's like a trade-off in hazards. If it's so wet, then that keeps the severe thunderstorm potential down. but then it increases the flash flood risk versus if it's not very wet and just mainly dry with scattered showers and thunderstorms, then you have more of a risk for severe thunderstorms. So anyway, it's a trade-off there, but nevertheless, we're looking at an unsettled weather pattern this week. And basically, we could see between 2 and 4 inches of rain with locally higher amounts, highest basically over the coastal plain and points eastward. And then this weekend, we can't rule out additional showers and storms, but coverage and rainfall amounts should be less than earlier in the week. And as I mentioned earlier, the tropics right now are quiet, at least for the next 5 days. Hazards and impacts, basically with all the rain that we're expecting, moderate to heavy rain episodes could lead to flash flooding, localized flooding of poor drainage areas, rises on streams and creeks, and eventually, maybe later this week, rises on the main stem rivers. So, we'll continue to keep you updated through the week, both with PowerPoint briefings, webinars if needed. We will definitely do, obviously, our routine webinar on Thursday, where I suspect we'll be talking mainly more about the river flooding, if there will be any. Again, if there is river flooding, that'll be probably a focus of Thursday's routine briefing. Or if it looks like river flooding is a sure bet, we'll probably send out PowerPoint briefings ahead even before that. All right, so obviously stay alert for rapid rises on streams and creeks. Be ready to move to higher ground and never drive through areas where water covers the roadway. Turn around, don't drown. So there you could see, the pretty gloomy day-to-day panel there for today, tonight, Tuesday, right through the week. As I mentioned, there'll still be the kind of afternoon and evening shower and thunderstorm activity on Friday. So if we do see any sunshine, that'll help get the temperatures up into the 80s. So, but staying on the cooler side with highs only in the 60s and 70s, during these more wet parts of the week. All right. So that's a weekly briefing. There's one thing I want to just share with you during this webinar is the opportunity to provide the National Weather Service some feedback about whether or not advisories should go away. So the National Weather Service is proposing changes to the watch, warning, and advisory system. We've heard some feedback over the years that the difference between watches and warnings and advisories could potentially be confusing at times. So anyway, we are seeking feedback about how we should move forward with the watch, warning, advisory system. And there is a link. I've already emailed this information out via our email list earlier today. But for those who are watching this after the fact on YouTube, or if you're not on our email list, obviously our email list is mainly for our core partners. So for our general public viewers of this, this is open to anybody. That surveymonkey.com/r/public-has-simp is the place you can go to provide feedback. Or you could go to weather.gov/has-simp down in the lower right, just to view more about the program. All right, so that wraps up the weekly briefing. Thank you again for joining us.